I hated to do it, just so you understand, and I hope we're going to be able to do something so that it doesn't end up in a very catastrophic situation. I don't want to see that happen. I really want to see peace, and I hope that we're able to do that. They cannot have a nuclear weapon. It's very simple. I'm not putting restrictions. They cannot have one thing. They cannot have a nuclear weapon. And if I think that they will have a nuclear weapon, despite what I just said, I think that's going to be very unfortunate for them. If, on the other hand, they can convince us that they won't, and I hope they can. It's very easy to do. It's actually very easy to do. I think they're going to have an unbelievable future.
Now look, I'm not going to go into massive detail here because you must have been living under a rock if you've not heard the news today that Donald Trump announced while he had Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, with him at the White House, that he was somehow going to take control of Gaza. He was going to own Gaza and rebuild it. We can get into the details of that later, but here he was at a presser today.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site, level the site and get rid of the destroyed buildings, level it out, create an economic development that will supply unlimited numbers of jobs and housing for the people of the area.
IKEA is already applying for the contract. He went on to say that other Middle Eastern nations are actually on board with this proposal.
You have to learn from history. You can't keep doing the same mistake over and over again. Gaza is a hellhole right now. It was before the bombing started, frankly. And we're going to give people a chance to live in a beautiful community that's safe and secure. And I think you're going to see a tremendous outflowing of support. I can tell you, I spoke to other leaders of countries in the Middle East, and they love the idea. They say it would really bring stability, and what we need is stability.
The Riviera of the Middle East is what Trump says he can deliver to Gaza. It seems a bit far-fetched, but so is a lot of the stuff Trump says, and sometimes he manages to deliver and sometimes he doesn't. What I don't think is in question here is the fact that Hamas cannot continue to rule in Gaza if there is to be any sort of peace in the Middle East, in that particular region, of course, between Gaza and Israel. The question is how exactly you manage to move Hamas on. What Trump seems to be suggesting here is that in some way the US takes control of the land, they disperse people and they rebuild it. Benjamin Netanyahu spoke about the fact that we cannot continue to have Hamas there today.
We can't leave Hamas there because Hamas will continue the battle to destroy Israel. They'll do, you know, when in this temporary ceasefire, one of their leaders comes out, you know what he says? We're going to do October 7th again, except we'll do it bigger. So obviously you can't talk about peace neither with Hamas or in the Middle East if this, toxic, murderous organization is left standing. Any more that you could make peace in Europe after World War II if the Nazi regime was left standing and the Nazi army was left standing. You want a different future? You got to knock out the people who want to destroy you and destroy peace. That's what we're going to do.
Now look, my analysis is much the same as Paul Murray's was just an hour ago. It's not going to happen. Michael Shoebridge explained exactly why with Chris Kenny earlier today.
So I don't think it's going to happen because 2 million Palestinians aren't going to happily leave Gaza, and the Arab states and Egypt are not going to welcome them in while Donald Trump turns the Gaza territory into some economic nirvana. Well, he's talking about America taking an ownership stake, an ownership position is the quote from him. And he's talking about the Palestinians not wanting to be there anymore because it's been destroyed and being happy to be somewhere else. And he even hoped that the King of Jordan and the general in Egypt would open their hearts and their lands to Palestinians. That is not going to happen. None of the Arab states, nor Egypt, welcomed Palestinians during this war. They kept their borders closed.
And I think on that count, he is right. I mean, it is such a difficult idea that you're going to get other Middle Eastern nations to take on the Palestinian people so that the US can somehow come in and take the place. Surely what Trump is playing at here is some kind of bargaining chip. This is not a literal, the US is going to somehow take Gaza and rebuild it, because it would take literally decades in order to achieve that. And by some means, you would actually have to achieve taking the land. And you're not just going to disperse Palestinian people overnight and tell them that this land now belongs to the US. You'd have to send troops in there. You'd have to fight a war on the ground. And something tells me Trump would avoid that if he could.